Some people don't just clean their homes, they quiet something inside themselves. You've probably felt it, that subtle shift when everything is in its place. The air feels lighter, your thoughts slow down. It's not just about cleanliness, it's about control, about calm, about creating a space where nothing feels overwhelming. And if you're someone who craves a tidy home, it's likely not just a preference. It's a language your mind learned over time, because chaos doesn't always start in the room around you. Sometimes it begins much earlier, in moments where things felt unpredictable, emotionally loud, or just slightly out of your control, not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes it was small, subtle, a tone of voice, a sudden change, a feeling that things could shift at any moment. And slowly, without realizing it, your mind began searching for something stable, something it could rely on. That's where order comes in. There's a quiet concept called emotional anchoring, the idea that we attach feelings of safety to certain environments or behaviors. For some, it's people. For others, it's structure, clean surfaces, organized spaces, predictable surroundings. Because when the outside world feels uncertain, creating order becomes a way to reclaim a sense of certainty. A tidy room becomes more than just a room. It becomes proof that something can stay in place, that something can be managed, that something, at least here, won't fall apart. And over time, this behavior deepens. It becomes ritualistic, not in an obsessive way, but in a comforting one. Folding clothes carefully, aligning objects just right, cleaning not just when it's needed, but when something feels off inside. Because sometimes what you're really trying to organize isn't the space, it's your thoughts. There's also something called micro-control, a subtle psychological response where you focus on small, manageable actions when bigger things feel too overwhelming to handle. You can't control people, you can't control outcomes, but you can control your environment. So you do, and it works, at least for a while, because every time you restore order, your mind relaxes, the noise quiets, the invisible tension softens, and for a moment it feels like everything is okay again. But there's another layer to this. For some, a tidy home isn't just about calm. It's about identity. It becomes a reflection of who you are, responsible, put together, in control. Maybe even someone who has everything figured out. And maintaining that image, both for yourself and others, becomes important. Because if things start to slip, if the space becomes messy, it can feel like something deeper is slipping too. Like you're losing grip. And that feeling can be uncomfortable. Sometimes even unsettling. There's a quiet fear hidden beneath it, the fear of disorder, not just in your home, but in your life. The idea that if you let things go, even a little, everything might become harder to manage, more chaotic, more uncertain. So you keep things in place. You stay ahead of the mess. You create a world where everything has a position, a purpose, a sense of clarity. But here's where it becomes more complex. Because what feels like peace can sometimes be pressure in disguise. Not loud pressure, not obvious, but subtle. The kind that whispers, keep it together. The kind that makes it hard to truly relax unless everything is just right. The kind that ties your inner state to your external environment so tightly that one begins to depend on the other. And when that happens, even small disruptions can feel bigger than they are. A cluttered table, a messy corner, an unmade bed. They're not just objects out of place. They're signals. Signals that something is off. And your mind responds quickly, sometimes automatically, trying to fix it, restore it, bring things back to how they should be. Because should be has become your comfort zone. And comfort zones, even healthy ones, can become limiting when they start to define what peace looks like. Because real peace isn't always perfect. It isn't always aligned. It isn't always controlled. But if your mind has learned to associate calm with order, then anything outside of that can feel unfamiliar, even unsafe. And that's why letting go, even slightly, can feel difficult. Not because you're rigid, not because you're obsessive, but because somewhere along the way, order became your way of feeling okay. Your way of creating stability in a world that didn't always offer it. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's deeply human. But every coping mechanism, no matter how gentle or helpful it once was, carries a deeper story. A story about what you needed, what you didn't have, and how you learned to give it to yourself. And if you look closely, your tidy home might not just be about cleanliness. It might be about safety, about clarity, about holding your world together in the only way you knew how. But the question is, what happens when life doesn't stay as organized as your space? When emotions don't line up as neatly as your shelves? When things fall out of place and you can't fix them right away? That's where something deeper begins to surface. And when that happens, when life refuses to stay within the lines you've carefully drawn, it can feel like something inside you begins to unravel, not loudly, not all at once, but quietly in small moments. You might notice it in the way your chest tightens when things feel out of place, in the subtle frustration that lingers longer than it should, in the restlessness that appears when you try to sit still in a space that doesn't feel right. Because when your sense of calm is tied to order, disorder doesn't just look uncomfortable. It feels personal. It feels like something is slipping. And over time, this can become exhausting. Not because keeping things tidy is wrong, but because you're carrying the responsibility of holding everything together all the time. Your environment, your emotions, your identity. It becomes a quiet pressure to maintain a version of peace that depends on everything going according to plan. But life doesn't work like that. It never really did. And this is where the shift begins, not in abandoning the order you've created, but in understanding it. Because what you built wasn't weakness. It was adaptation, a way to give yourself safety when you needed it most, a way to create clarity in moments that felt uncertain, a way to breathe when the world around you felt overwhelming. And there is nothing wrong with that. But now, you're allowed to expand beyond it, to slowly teach your mind that safety doesn't only exist in perfect alignment. That calm isn't something that disappears the moment things become messy, that you are still okay, even when your surroundings are not. This doesn't happen all at once. It starts gently, leaving a small thing out of place and noticing that nothing breaks. Sitting in a slightly messy room and allowing yourself to breathe through the discomfort instead of fixing it immediately, letting a moment be imperfect without rushing to correct it. At first, it will feel unfamiliar, maybe even wrong. But that feeling isn't danger. It's just new. And with time, your mind begins to learn something it didn't know before. That peace isn't something you have to constantly maintain through control. It's something that can exist within you, even when the outside world isn't perfectly arranged. And when that realization settles in, something softens. You start to clean, not because you're trying to fix something inside you, but because you genuinely enjoy the feeling it creates. You start to organize not out of fear, but out of choice. Your space becomes an extension of your well-being, not the source of it. There's more room to breathe, more room to exist, more room to simply be. Because the truth is, Your need for order was never the problem. It was the meaning attached to it. The quiet belief that without it, you wouldn't feel okay. But you will. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not instantly, but gradually, gently, you will. Because beneath all the habits, all the patterns, all the careful systems you've built, there is a part of you that already knows how to be at peace. Not because everything is in place, but because you are. And that kind of peace doesn't need perfection to survive. It doesn't disappear with a little chaos. It doesn't depend on everything being just right. It stays, quietly, steadily, waiting for you to trust it. So if you've always found comfort in tidy spaces, if order has been your way of holding the world together, there is nothing wrong with you. You simply learned how to create safety in the only way you knew. And now, you're learning that you don't have to carry that weight alone anymore. That you can rest, even when things are unfinished. That you can breathe, even when things are imperfect. And that you are allowed to feel okay, without constantly fixing everything around you. Because peace was never something you had to build from the outside. It was something you were always capable of finding within. And if this felt like it understood a part of you that's hard to explain, then you're not alone in this quiet need for control and calm. There are others like you, learning, slowly, how to let go without losing themselves. So if this story stayed with you, you can stay a little longer. Not to fix anything, but to remember that you were never broken to begin with.